I'm Huon Hooke, and this is The Real Review. I'm about to taste the Hentley Farm Shiraz, The Creation it's called, 2017 vintage from the Barossa Valley. This comes from the western ridge of the Barossa Valley, which is Seppeltsfield, Marananga, Greenock, that sort of area, which is one of the most prized parts of the Barossa. Interesting thing about Hentley Farm is that it's actually not an old winery at all, and you'd expect that a lot of these big concentrated Shirazes in the Barossa come from old vines. They make a big thing out of old vines in the Barossa, but this vineyard, they didn't start their property until 1997. Keith Henschke is the name of the man who owns it. Henschke with a T in the middle, and not to be confused with Henschke's at Eden Valley. But the vineyard planted in 1997, and it was only a few years before they started making some pretty impressive wines. So they have obviously got a great piece of dirt, and they've got good staff, people who know what they're doing. I think they're very clever people indeed. The winemaker, Andrew Quinn, I think is doing an exceptionally good job. Their top wine is even more expensive than this one. This is $150, mind you. The top one is about $200, and it's called the Clos Otto. And if you think this has got an interesting label, the Clos Otto has a very interesting label too. It's made of felt. Not too many felt labels on bottles. But it's not the label you're drinking, it's the wine, and the wine is of its type, big, full-bodied Western Barossa style of Shiraz. Let's have a taste. Wonderful colour, very, very deep colour, promising, very promising. Barossa Shiraz, it's not deep coloured, is probably a little suspect, and this one has terrific colour. Smell it, and wow, it's got a riot of aromas there. There's mocha, there's blackberry, there's a bit of fruit cake, there's all of these macerated fruit characters, there's some charry, smoky oak character. There's a bit of the ironstone earthiness that Barossa reds from this district have, because there's a lot of ironstone in the soil. Maybe there's a link, maybe there's not. But it's really quite a promising nose. Have a taste. And that is a huge mouthful of flavour. It's a very big wine. Hentley Farm are pretty renowned for big wines. One of their wines is called the Beast, another one's called the Beauty. They're all really rich, concentrated, powerful wines. This wine is the Creation. It's a slightly eccentric wine. Every year the winemaker takes the attitude that they're going to isolate a certain part of a certain vineyard and see if they can make something special out of that little specific site. And that's what this is. We rated at 96 out of 100, very high rating. That's a high gold ribbon score. We've tasted 153 wines from that vintage from the Barossa Valley, and this rated number 4. So that gives it a top wine ranking, which is very high indeed. As for drinking window, I would think between now, roughly now, well, I'd keep it for a year or two if I had it in my cellar before I started drinking it, but drink it until about 2040, so that's 30 years away, no problem. This is a long-term wine. It will last longer than that if it's well cellared, but I suspect most people won't cellar it for that long, but I reckon it would be peaking in about 15 to 20 years. The winery recommends as a food match, pork belly. That's nice and simple. They haven't embellished that with how they would sauce it or cook it or what vegetables they'd put with it. But pork belly, you know, it's a nice fatty dish. Fatty dishes go well with tannic wines, and this is quite a high tannin wine. But it's not astringent. I don't want you to think it's astringent and forbidding and unpleasant to drink now. It's got a lot of tannin, but they're very soft, round, velvety tannins, and I really think that's a wine that the people who love big reds would enjoy drinking that straight away, but you have no problem in watching that age gracefully for the next 20 to 25, 30 years. It's going to be a long-termer.